Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Bo's Slow English. In today's episode, I'm interviewing my good friend, Jean. Jean and I met over 10 years ago, a really long time ago, when I was his hairstylist. I used to cut his hair. So we stayed in touch, and he's really smart, and he's going to talk to us about the stock market. And he'll simplify things, which means he'll make it easy to understand. And I hope you learn a lot from this today. Before I introduce Jean, please click like and subscribe and share this video with your friends. And here is Jean. Hi.
Hey, Bo. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I am so grateful for your time, and I appreciate you coming on here, teaching us some new vocabulary words, teaching us money and stock. And let's start with, what do you do for work?
Great. Thank you, Bo. And my job, I run an investment team. So we have about 22 people. We make investment recommendations, so suggestions, what to do. So how to look at the economy, how to look at the stock market, give our best guess. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is the economy going to do well, do poorly? We also help our clients look at investments and say, should we be investing in the United States? Should we invest outside the United States? And then we also look at specific investment recommendations. What do you invest in? This stock or that stock? So those are sort of the three things we do. Everything revolves around those three things.
What is a simple definition for investment, and why should someone consider investments?
Sure, that's a very, very great question. It goes back to a simple thing, very simple, this. The more risk you take, the more expected return. So basically, you could invest money in the savings account and you get a little interest. Or you can invest in something a little bit more risky and there's a chance you'll get a higher expected return. And given the fact that we want to invest for the long term, we want to invest for long and long and long, we are able to take risks and we're able to mitigate. That's a bad word, mitigate. We're able to avoid some of the bad points about investing. So long story short, you want to invest because it helps money grow for you in a long-term way.
We all love money, and we all want money to grow on trees, especially. When I think of investments sometimes, especially for investments that have a high risk, I feel like I'm gambling. Mm-hmm. Do other people feel that way?
I mean, using the word gambling and investing, it's not a good idea, but I think if you look, there are some investments that will do well, some stocks will do well, and some stocks that will do poorly. The best way to avoid some of that, going the wrong way or losing all your money is to have exposure, have a little bit of money or exposure to different parts of the market. So for example, simply you can look at maybe a little bit of international stocks, a little bit of US stocks, a little bit of bonds, a little bit of stocks. So just mixing things up, maybe a little gold. All you want to do is have things that don't all move in the same direction so that you help reduce your fluctuations or your volatility. That helps.
Is having a little bit of investments in different areas, is that called diversifying?
Yes, diversification. It's a very long-term, it's a very boring strategy, but it really works because what you're doing is you're not putting everything in investments that all move in the same direction. So if you're right, and everything goes higher, you feel like a hero, like a really exciting person. But if everything moves down together and falls, That's where it gets a little bit worrisome and scary. So what you do is combine investments that some move up, some move down. So it's a very sort of a very less volatile or less fluctuations in your portfolios.
I bet you've never had this question asked before in your TV interviews. What is a stock?
Sure. A stock and a bond, basically a company, like a large company out there, they want to raise money to grow their business. They want to, go into new markets. They want to go into new areas. So what they do is they come to investors and say, we're going to sell part of the company to you in called like little pieces of ownership, little tiny bits of ownership called stock, called shares. And then when they sell it to the market, investors like you and I buy those shares, and we become part owners of the company. There could be thousands and thousands and thousands of owners, but we're all owners of the company. And if the company does well, in theory, you get earnings from the company, you get dividends, you get a little bit more like return from the stock. So if you get shares of a company that's doing really well, that's good. If you buy shares of a company not doing well or business is going the wrong way, that's not good.
Thank you so much for answering that. May I ask you some personal questions?
Sure, my pleasure.
What did you major in college?
Sure. So I live in California now, but I'm from the East Coast of the United States. So I'm from an hour west of Boston, Massachusetts. And I went to a small engineering school called Worcester Polytech. Can't spell that. That's a hard phrase to spell, but called WPI. That's my school. And I went to school for aerospace engineering. And then something happened back in the early 90s. We had a Cold War, and the Cold War ended. So basically, the United States and Europe relative to Russia and other countries in Europe, kind of, a little bit arguing and so on. But with the fall of the Berlin Wall and with the Cold War ending, a lot of those aerospace jobs, in my opinion, were going to be there. So I switched to much more manufacturing engineering, just engineering around building things, building TVs, refrigerators, things like that. Then I graduated from college and I didn't want to be an engineer. So I ended up going to grad school to get my MBA. And in my MBA, my master's of business, I got that in finance.
Thank you. I actually have several subscribers who are engineers. So I think they would find this story to be interesting. And I found this out because I was explaining my uncle's story, who bought Intel's patent for their microchip. Mm-hmm. And he created a prototype of a semiconductor. And I believe he is the first Korean American to have a company go public, so in the stock market. And when I explained the story, I wasn't sure how much of the vocabulary my subscribers would be able to understand. But that's when I learned, wow, I actually have a lot of engineer subscribers on here, so they fully understood.
I did not realize your Korean uncle, was Mr. Samsung.
He's cooler. He's cooler than Mr. Samsung. What is your ethnicity?
Sure. Everyone always asks me that question. So first of all, on my father's side, my father is European descent, so German, Polish, Swedish. And then my mom's side, she's 3/4 Thai, an eighth Chinese, and an eighth Indian. And my parents met in the Vietnam War. My father was a soldier. My mom worked for the U.S. government as a telephone operator. And my father, had some time to take a vacation away from the war, and he called the U.S. government to figure out where I could go to Thailand and where he could go. And the operator was my mom on the phone, and they met. And then,
that is so sweet.
Yeah, and then I think they went on a date a few weeks later, and then they got married 2 years later. I was born a couple years after that, and then 3 years after that, they got divorced.
Oh,
the American story.
Well, it was a sweet story how they met. Do you speak any other language?
took a lot of languages in high school and college, and I also lived in Germany. So I speak a little German, a little bit, not that great anymore. So I also took in high school, I took French and Latin, and I don't speak Latin in conversation anymore, but I can speak a little French. And then my wife, as you know, May is from El Salvador, and May speaks Spanish. So I can hear some Spanish words occasionally. I'm learning all the bad Spanish words, of course. But I speak a little bit of everything. So, but as you know, in the world, if you speak 2 languages, you're bilingual. If you speak 3 languages, you're trilingual. If you speak 1 language, you're American. So.
Yeah, that's true. Guten Tag.
Oh, good Tag. My Name is Jean.
Oh, I do remember that. I took German in college. I only went to college for a few semesters, and German was extremely difficult for me because I learned Spanish in high school, and Spanish being a Romance language and German being an Anglo language. It's so different. But now that I know a little bit of French, and it's a mix of the Anglo and the Romance, I feel like I could maybe pick up on some German now. Do you have any suggestions for my viewers on how they can improve their English?
Sure. If you look at myself, I think I'm very good at data, at numbers, at facts. What I'm terrible at is memorization. I'm terrible at memorizing something. And in a lot of languages, you memorize words. So what helps me, especially when my wife says something to me in Spanish, if I can see the word written out, that helps me, because then I can associate how that word is spelled with the sound of the word. So I would try that. And then a lot of language, as you said, Bo, a lot of languages are very similar. So since they're very similar, what I would look at, you could look at a word and it's very similar to how it's said in another language. So breaking down a word, and you can be pretty close that way. But for me, the best advice, just write out the word and just see it. Then you can visualize that word.
I love that advice. Can you tell me and us, what does your daily routine look like? Just a quick summary from the moment you wake up, from the moment you go to bed.
Work-wise or non-work-wise?
Work-wise.
Okay. Because that's a very different story. Okay. So my work, my job and my company and my team, we follow the US stock market. So the US stock market opens at 9:30 on the East Coast. So in New York City, it opens at 9:30. So because I'm in California, that's 6:30. So I tend to wake up around 5 a.m. really early. I'm an early riser, get up really early. I have a couple dogs, so I take my dogs out. Then I start to look at the data that happened overnight. Because as you know, the market is a constant revolving scenario. So when I'm sleeping, Japan is trading, and Europe is trading. So you have to look at what happened overnight to say, how will that affect the stock market that day? Then I look at any economic data. Then what I do is, my team, we have a couple conference calls to discuss what do we think is going on. And then we also have some longer term projects that we work on. So it's a combination of looking at near term or what's going on that day in the markets with our long term sort of where do we see the economy in the markets, let's just say a few weeks, a few months, or a couple of years out. So it's a mix of both. I tend to work until, if my bosses are listening, I work until about 6 or 7 p.m. But if they're not listening, I work until about 4 or so.
I just learned so much about what you do on a daily basis, because I text you, randomly, and I ask you some stock questions, and I wonder, is he at home or is he at the office? So do you normally work from home?
Sure. I also do travel a lot. So for my role, in addition to leading a team, I also present to people. I do a lot of presentations and also going on TV. So I have to fly to New York to get in front, I get to wear makeup. So you'll appreciate that. So you get to wear makeup and they fix my hair. But I do a lot of presentations, but to your question, we are hybrid. So that means we work a little bit in the office and a little bit at home. So I'm in the office a normal week on every Wednesday and Thursday, and I'm at home working Monday, Tuesday, and Friday.
Do you love your job?
I love it. Yes. I think if you spend about 40% of your life, of your day's work working. So you have to love it. If you don't love it, then that's 40% that you'll be very unhappy.
It is so Gene of you to provide that percentage to say 40%. I have had some viewers ask me, I plan to move to America and I don't know what to do for work. Do you have any quick suggestions on how they can discover their passion?
I'll answer your question two ways. So first way, I think always look at what interests you. So yes, I loved math. I am a nerd. We all know that word, whether we're Spanish or English or Brazilian, but nerd, so I like numbers, I like data. So I really wanted to be an engineer. But my mom also subscribed to financial newspapers. So I would see those. So that always made me interested in that. So I would think about what interests you. I could say I played baseball in college. So I would love to be a professional baseball player, but my skills plateaued. I got bad after a certain. I'm not good anymore. So my eyesight, and I'm older. But I would look at what you have a passion for, definitely, what you like to do. The other aspect is really think about the world today, and artificial intelligence is changing everything so fast, so quickly. Like, here's an example. I'm going to get very financial services and economic geek out for you, but you look at the employment, okay, the number of jobs. Jobs are slowing down. We've seen all the data, but the economy is doing really well. That means it's growing stronger and stronger. Corporate earnings are growing stronger and stronger. Productivity is growing. So that means the same number of people are producing more stuff. So what I think is going on, because the labor market is slowing down, that artificial intelligence is being used more and more and more in work. And so now what that means for your listeners and your viewers, look at jobs that could be fairly safe for AI. So artificial intelligence. So maybe ways to communicate, jobs around, going to school around softer skills like communication, maybe sociology, maybe philosophy. Because anything that's repetitive, even an engineer, I would not go to school for engineering today because I think that's going to be gone with AI. AI is faster. It's like using a calculator today versus trying to do math in your head. Calculator is faster. AI will be faster. So I know I went a very long answer to a short question, but it's very important.
That is really important. And the other day I was thinking, if I were to go back to school, I think I would maybe go into marketing. I think marketing is a very safe job. But yeah, I appreciate that response.
Yeah, marketing is a very safe job as long as you use AI to leverage or to make it better. Like AI gives you data. So you and I talked about this before we started talking. You know who your listeners are, who your viewers are, because you can get AI to get that data. And that's really good. Marketing is a very soft skill, but if you use data to target the right people, that's how it gets better. Like my team, we're investment people, but we use AI to look at data in a better way.
You are so smart, Gene. I'm very lucky to have you as my friend.
Say it to all your guests. So I'm just kidding.
No. Well, I think you provided a lot of knowledge and insight into stock market. I have one more question. Do you say financial or financial?
Oh, that's a great question. So I've always wondered that. And what I learned, my finance professor said, say finance if you're in the industry, and people that are not industry say finance. So finance is what you say if you're working in the financial services industry, but you say finance if you don't. So just, that's what he said. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not sure, but that's what he told me. So
I believe that because I'm listening to a book right now called E-Myth. Maybe you've heard of it, but he keeps saying financial, and it makes me think, would I sound smarter if I said financial and not fine? I don't even, how do I say it? Financial.
financial versus financial. Now I'm getting confused. So
Yeah.
and I read, the only audiobook I listened to is Matthew McConaughey, the actor, Green Lights. And I thought that was interesting. So it's a good book. I don't usually listen to books, but he did a great job. And for your listeners, not to sell the book, but for your listeners, he does all the voices in the book. And it's an autobiography, so it's about himself. And he does a great perspective on how he became an actor, what he did, and his mother, his father, his family, but he does all the voices. And the only reason I talk about this book is because I did an interview with him at one of my conferences, and we talked about the book and how he met his wife in the book. Point of the story is, it's a great book to listen to because you hear all the different voices. He'll do a Southern accent. He'll do a businessman. He'll do a financial person's accent. So it's a good book to listen to.
That's actually great advice, to listen to an ebook that has different American accents. That can definitely help with training the ears. I am so grateful for you. Thank you so much for coming on to my channel, and I'm sure my listeners have learned so much about the stock market, and I hope to see you soon on my channel.
So, thanks so much. Sounds great. Thanks for having me on your show. I look forward to the next opportunity.
Sounds good. Bye.